Mirka, good morning. How are you?
I'm okay, so and so. Um,
Yes,
it's been a very challenging time for all of us, I think. And I, as you know, I have 4 children, so I've been homeschooling them. This is the second week of us being
yes,
home in a quarantine, and at the same time trying to support our school and work on the future of the training institute. So it's been really hard. And we
yes,
also we are also are trying to create a little support network for parents in the Czech Republic and for our lead Montessori group. So there's a lot going on. uh,
yes,
so I'm
yes.
sure it's not so easy on your end as well. How, how are you? Is everything okay with you?
Yes, thank you, Mirka, for asking. So we are also quarantined at home, my husband and I, and it's. I've been doing a lot of blogging and thinking about how to lead our lives right now because I feel as if, for me, and certainly I'm wondering if you would agree, it feels as if we suddenly landed on another planet. I mean, this has been very abrupt. And when I think about it, that's a lot to process. It's a lot, especially for you when you say you have 4 children. Any parents out there are must be really feeling a tremendous amount because you're being met with some of the most, well, let's face it, this is unprecedented. And your hearts are heavy because as human beings, your first priority is the safety and security of your children, and that's being challenged. And so you're also being told, oh, you might not have any money coming in your jobs, and you need to think about that, obviously. And for you, you have to think about the institute, and you think about the school. And so you have a lot on your shoulders right now, which is why I've been saying in my blogs, as a consultant, I think you have to be gentle with yourselves because you really start with yourself. And I know a lot of people in Connecticut, I suppose it's true there, are rushing into finding ways to homeschool their children. And I do think we have, it's wonderful to give them homeschooling, and our schools are supporting them. However, ironically, in a way, Montessori is an education for life, right? And so we suddenly find ourselves looking at ways in which we can teach our children, really teach them what I call the practical life skills,
Mhm.
which means, they really can. If they can work a computer, they can learn how to wash their clothes, they can be more helpful. And so I've been thinking about the human needs, Mirka, all the human needs that Montessori wrote about, because I think they can guide us. And I think for the first and foremost, for me, we have been disoriented from our environment. What we had set up has suddenly been turned around all of a sudden. And so, in a way, my recommendation for parents is that they take a pause, hit the pause button.
Mhm.
They now have more time than they ever thought.
Mhm.
Take the time to really look at your environments again and say, okay, and for you, Mirka, you have 4 children. So your children are different stages or planes of development. But what I would be doing and what I've advised my own children to do with our grandchildren is join them, take them and say, this is spring. And we're forgetting that it is spring, but it is spring. And there's such great beauty to that. But inside, think about the preparation of the environment again, and basically go through and reorganize, declutter, reorganize with your children their shelves and where they put their art materials, and look at where they put their sensorial or materials such as puzzles and things like that. I do not think we need to be teaching Montessori at home per se as parents, because that's a sort of scientifically prepared environment. However, I think that what we are called upon is exactly what Maria Montessori discovered. Remember, she survived the Second World War, which is to set up the environment such that the child is working on the care of the environment and be, meeting that need to be more independent, self-sufficient, to be really to belong. This is that's the need to belong. And but we often don't include them when we cook.
Mm.
But I think this is the time more than ever to say, this is a recipe I can teach you. Let's do it together.
Well, thank you. So I read your wonderful blog, so
Thank you.
I already know some of your insights, but maybe if you can elaborate a little bit more on, from what I understand from what you said is that each child, my four children are each at a different stage of development, and
Yes.
so they have different needs.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit about each of those categories of children and say maybe stress one or two really important things that we as parents should keep in mind every day for each, like
Sure.
3-year-olds and then a child in the elementary and then perhaps an adolescent child?
Sure, of course. And how you communicate about the coronavirus is very different depending upon the ages of your children.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take the children in the first plane of development, which is birth to 6, with the subphase of birth to 3, 3 to 6,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to say very little about what this is about. And because you want to be very careful, I think you need to practice being a better listener. But I think you give them basic information, and then in terms of the environment, I would look very carefully at their need for independence and their need to be a purposeful member in the family. And I think I would focus on really go to your kitchen. That's the best place. And that's where you can be working on the cooking the techniques and things. If one of you, your husband, your spouse, your partner happens to be good at carpentry, what a wonderful time to teach carpentry. And I think you can do this in the most basic of ways, but we get so busy and we have been so busy in our lives, we might not have ever shown them some of those basic skills. Sewing, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And you would take different things according to the child's ability, right? Physical ability and social emotional ability. I guess what I would say to you most of all is I really think we have to take a lot of care of our emotional selves and the child's emotion. Remember, they're going through a lot. So part of what will bring them inner peace and calmness, which is what we're all looking for right now in this very uncertain time, is we need to get our environments in order again. So I would turn to them. They're in a sensitive period for practical life, and I would do what you could to help them reorganize their areas where they're going to be. And they need their space. They need a place where they're going to do their little assignments if they are in a Montessori program that is now with the older children doing. Are your schools
Yes.
doing that?
Yes, we are. Our school, our elementary children are in touch with their teachers every day online via Google Hangouts, and they have meetings and they have assignments. And yes, so what we did at our home is that all of the school children, they each have a room. It's we have a lot of children, so obviously we need a lot of rooms, and maybe not every family is in that. They don't have that possibility, but in our house they each have their own room and their own workspace. And this was the first thing that we did, was that we said, okay, so let's look at this room and see how we can make it an
Perfect.
environment ready for this time.
Yes, and I'm a great believer. I don't know, maybe it's my generation. We did a lot of what we would call in our classrooms class meetings. Are you familiar with that concept?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I believe the same thing needs to be done and can be done. And I did it with my own children when they were young. I would have a meeting and sit down and say, okay, we find ourselves in this situation, and our role is to stay inside. I mean, there are people in the front line, right? And again, you'll have the conversation differently with your older children. But what I'm trying to say is you have to come, it's bringing us together in a lovely way. But part of it is to set the guidelines. So what I'm saying is the children need the structure.
Yeah.
We need the structure, so that you have a schedule for the day, which sounds like you're doing.
Yeah.
But the point being that, the children could start to show varying emotions and be rebellious at times, or sulky, or go to their room and not want to come out because they're sad, which would be very attuned to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having our family meetings is a very important thing. At the elementary age, when children are around 6, they're beginning to work with their logical minds, right?
Mm.
So at that stage, your conversation differs, but again, you're meeting the human needs. And what do they mostly need at the elementary age, unlike the primary or children's house age, is they need connection. We all do. But at that age, you're going to see it in a more profound way. So I love this fact that though I'm not a huge proponent of technology for children right now, having the ability to FaceTime with their classmates and that sort of thing is going to be really, really important. So in any way that they can stay connected to their grandparents, to their friends, I would make that a priority, because that's the age of the herd age. That's the time, the second plane. And then when they get to that third plane of development, which is what you were asking me about the various planes, I think you can have a really deep conversation about the seriousness of this situation. This is, in many instances, life and death. And the truth is, not to sound grim, I think we may see, I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. And we're going to start, sadly, we may see, hopefully not, friends who are affected, who are hospitalized. We may find that we know people who died because of this. So I think it's important at the third plane to have the conversation that is honest and that allows them to express their fears about this. Because there's going to come a time when a child, and probably it can be maybe in that second plane, when they'll ask the question, could somebody die? And the answer to that is yes, but I think always bring that conversation to a more positive spin to say, yes, that can happen, but this is what we're going to focus on. The good nurses and the doctors and the scientists who are working really hard, and every day they have more equipment. So bring that conversation to a more positive level, if you will, because you don't want to scare the children. Yes. But we have to also be honest with them, particularly as they get older. Would you agree, America?
Absolutely. And you're bringing me to think about the fact that I really have, this is a conversation I still need to have with my oldest son, as we spend a lot of time together as a whole family now, much more than when they would go to school. We take a lot of time to talk at breakfast. We on the very first day of this crisis, when we started homeschooling, we sat down at breakfast and we said, so what are going to be the rules at this house for this time? And we said we will spend every meal together. So we prepare for breakfast together, then we have breakfast together, we do the same for lunch, and we do the same for dinner, and we really try to take this time as time to talk. But that's time when the little ones are around, and it's a different kind of conversation when the whole family is present. So I really need to spend some time with my oldest son and maybe talk about these things in a different way with him than I would do at the table.
Yes, and how old is your oldest son, Mirka?
He's 15. He's 15 now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a 15-year-old granddaughter. And I can't see her now, but I do FaceTime her and speak with her, and she's handling it very well. But what my approach has been is not to say, oh, get over it. It has been quite the opposite. I immediately called her and I said, I know this must make you really upset. And we've talked honestly and openly about, she has not asked me anything particularly about death. That we have not had that conversation, and I might leave that to her mom, but right now I'm happy to have it. It's amazing what we talk about, by the way, a lot. And we're very open with each other. We've almost co-parented her. But now what she's, I've said to her, she's very athletic and everything. So all those things that she was doing and the being together with her friends has all come to a rapid halt. So we talk about, it's not fair. Life is not always fair, but we have to count our blessings. And I've recommended to her that she keep a journal, as I'm doing. And I've recommended the same thing to my 10-year-old granddaughter. I think journaling is helpful in the terms of being able to express your feelings. And that's a private thing. It's something that they can do privately. But what I guess I'm saying is I think we do have to realize and recognize that each child is going to be going through this differently. The little ones in the first plane are going to go about doing whatever it was that they normally did. They'll play. And you could say to them, oh, we have a cousin who's very ill. And they won't take that in the same way. And what sometimes upsets parents is they go, oh, and then they go back and play. They mean no harm, right? Yeah. But the older child may not show it, but begin to worry a lot. So be attuned to that, Mirka. Yes. This is hard on them.
Yeah. I really need to have that talk with Christoph. It's the youngest daughter is 3, and I think she thinks she's on a vacation. It's, for her, it's like she's so happy that she's able to take naps with me more often than normally, and just she was really upset about having to wear a mask the other day. We went for a walk and she didn't want to wear the mask, and she was really angry. And I said, if you want to go out on the street with me, this is what we have to do. We have a choice. We can stay inside or stay in the garden, but if we want to go out, it has to be a mask. So then she finally wore it, but she had an issue with it physically restraining her, and it's a completely different way of processing. Anna Maria, who's 7, is her biggest issue right now is she can't see her friends. She really wants to see her friends, and
yes.
I think she feels lonely, and she just wants to go back to school, and she asks me every day, when can I go back to school to see my friends? So it's really hard for her.
That's the age, as I was saying, where the thing they want the most is their friends. And so she, of course, does feel that. My 10-year-old granddaughter who fled from Brooklyn, New York to the country is feeling that very strongly, and asked her dad, my son, the other day, if we get one of those suits that we cover ourselves in, can we go back home? So in her situation, she's moved out of her place. And when he was making the move very rapidly to come to, I said, she doesn't have a pet. They live in an apartment, but she has a fish. I said, you must bring the fish. So the fish is there. And in this instance, they're really having to make a huge effort because they are really now way out in the country. And there's no one around but their mom and dad who are needing to work. So each child's situation is different because she's an only child, and loneliness is unfortunately something that they're going to have to fight right now.
We allowed Anna Maria to make calls with friends on FaceTime, and then just give her the phone and leave the room and let her chat away for half an hour with one of her besties, and I could hear them going on, and she was really happy after that. So I think at least that's some way for her to be connected to others.
Yes.
As you said, it's really hard for parents as well. I get all these text messages from people saying, how should we do this? How do you do it? You have 4 children. Tell us how to do it. People are, and it's, I have to say that for me, it's different every day. I wake up and either I'm feeling okay and I can do little bits of work, though it's hard to focus on something for a substantial amount of time. It's easier for me now to do small tasks and be able to have, leave the focus for a moment and then go and do a little bit of something and then come back to it. But there are days when I wake up and I feel as if like if you have a flu coming onto you and you kind of feel sort of no energy, and as we have a saying in Czech, and I don't know how to say it in English, but it's when you take a plug out of a bathtub and water comes out. It's that kind of a feeling that the energy just comes out of you, and I just feel like I can't do anything. I can't even think about work. So there's this fluctuation between being sort of okay and being really useless
Yes,
And
yes,
for me, being useless is really upsetting because I'm used to me being useful all the time. So it's really, so how do we as parents deal with this? And then, as you said, we have to stay calm and emotionally balanced because children pick up on where
yes.
we are. So that's also very hard.
So I share how you feel, and I have been sort of mindful, if you will, of my emotions during this time. To be honest, I think you've expressed it very well, and my message to you, America, is be good to yourself. I think this is a time for extra self-care because, like I'm sure many parents would share, you're carrying this burden where the message is, oh, and you know it, your children are looking to you. And yes, so you have to have this position of being very strong all the time. But I think in those, you also need times where you can just quietly go and read or journal. I think you have to be very aware that what you're going through is extremely normal. And any way that you can find, I yesterday did a mindfulness meditation. I think that
Mm-hmm.
helps very, very much. If you can walk, I think getting outside, I find I haven't been out for 3 days, and today the sun is finally out, and I can go a short distance here. But I find it very difficult not to go outside. It's very constraining. It's like that mask, right, for your daughter.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of being constrained. So I think to the extent that you can get out, and I don't want to sound hokey, but be with the earth again, because all around us, spring is happening and there's life that we can look at and know this will come to an end at some point. The fact of the matter is we don't know when, but our nature is showing us that the trees are budding here and we're beginning to see little flowers bloom and so on. That will give us hope. So we have to find ways to stay positive, and it's going to be hard. I would recommend something that, frankly, I believe in rituals,
Mm-hmm.
and rituals are very important. You mentioned your family is eating together. To the extent that you can, amongst with everything else you're doing, ritualize it. I think the family time at the table is probably one of the most important ways we can get across our values. And quite honestly, I think at this time, make the extra effort to use pretty cloth napkins or flowers from the garden if they're out, or set it the table in some way that makes it very special. Uh, what I would say is I am looking to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. If
Mm-hmm.
we, and so at what my husband and I are doing is with the meals that we're making, and he's more the chef than I. He loves to cook, thank God. When we sit down, like the last night, we had pasta. So we had a pause, a moment of prayer, really, for the people in Italy and what they're going through. My daughter-in-law is from Spain, Santiago de Compostela, and she has a sister on the front lines in Vigo. She's a doctor there. So we made a Spanish tortilla. So that night we thought about the Spanish. And so what we're trying to do, we'll have to have a check meal now, but we're trying to sort of bring a mindfulness to our countries that are going through this very, very awful time, so that there's a solidarity in our feeling and our wish that everyone would be well. The other thing which we're thinking about doing, and I think it's something in terms of ritual, um, in our town, in the country, we have a church, and you have beautiful churches and the bells ring all the time. I'm going to write to our local priest and suggest that we have at noon or at a particular time, let the bells ring all around the town as a means of stopping and pausing and reflecting on one another and our solidarity and and for our healthcare workers and for ourselves, for our health, because I think we have every right to wish for that and pray for that. And lastly, during the Second World War, I had read that people used to put a candle in the window. And so to ritualize that with your children, I have to research it. I only read it, but I think if they didn't, I'm going to start this by lighting a candle, putting it in the window, and again, taking that time out to say, let's be mindful of what, and say a little prayer, or have your children write a poem or something, and think about others. It's hard at this time, and maybe make a wish of some kind. What are we wishing for today? And so I think lighting that candle would be important.
Mary Lou, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation, and I think if it would be okay with you, I would love to organize some kind of like an online meeting and allow other people to be able to talk to you if you were available sometime in the future, because this was really, really nice. And we'll share it as a video, but I think people would really appreciate talking with you. So if it's okay, maybe we can plan a little one more get together.
Yes, I'd love that.
And thank you so much. I can't say anything better than what you've just said, and I really appreciate that you were able to talk to me today. And
Well, thank you. It was an honor to talk to you. I love your country. I was there for the Montessori.
I'll send you some Czech recipe for dinner,
Oh,
okay?
yes.
And
I was thinking about you, your 4
yes.
children, all the people in your country.
And maybe we can agree that you and I light a candle in our window today, and
Yes.
we'll be sharing this video today, so maybe other people can light a candle in their window today and think about others and wishing others well.
Let's do that.
Yes.
Today.
Okay.
And this will be a new beginning in that way. And if I can be of any help, Miracle, I'm happy to. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and have a really wonderful morning. We'll be in touch. Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.